The armor had been a legend long before it had become a myth. For centuries, civilizations across the galaxy had sought it, studied it, and attempted to master it. Its origins were shrouded in mystery, its purpose unknown, but its power undeniable. Alien races, each more advanced than the last, had approached it, but all had been rejected. The armor, it seemed, had a mind of its own, and it would not bond with any species except one, the one it was created for. The first race to attempt bonding with the armor had been the Ascari. Tall, ethereal beings, their skin shimmered like liquid light, and their intelligence rivaled that of the galaxy's greatest minds. They approached the armor with reverence, sure that their technological prowess would earn them its favor. They were wrong. Their scientists studied the armor for weeks, employing every tool at their disposal. They tried to unlock its secrets, to decode its intricate patterns, but the armor was unfathomable. It refused to cooperate. No matter the method, no matter the degree of effort, the armor resisted. They could not force it to activate, and they could not coax it into acceptance. One by one, they began to lose hope. The more they attempted, the more the armor's rejection became apparent. It was as though the armor could sense their touch and recoiled, indifferent to their advanced technology. Frustration mounted. The Ascari leaders, their pride hurt, grew desperate. They tried something else. A direct connection, a melding of minds, something no species had attempted before. A volunteer, an Ascari elder with unmatched psychic power, stepped forward. The elder's mind was vast, his powers immense, and the Ascari believed that through psychic resonance, they would finally command the armor to bond. The elder approached the armor, closing his eyes and reaching out with his mind. At first, there was nothing, a calm, cold void. Then the armor shifted, reacting as though it were aware of his presence. The elder's mind surged with a vision, a cascade of images too complex and alien to comprehend. But there was no communication, no connection, only a deep, suffocating rejection. The elder fell back, convulsing in pain. The armor had shown him nothing but the vast emptiness of space, the void of unfulfilled expectations. It was only after this failed attempt that the Ascari admitted defeat. The armor was not just impervious to their technology, it actively rejected them. Their pride shattered, they abandoned the quest, and their attempts were recorded as nothing more than a cautionary tale. But the armor remained untouched, waiting. Over the next millennia, more races tried and failed. The Creel, a species known for their brute strength and cunning, tried to physically force the armor open. They used explosives, heavy machinery, and every weapon in their arsenal, but the armor resisted every attempt. When one of their greatest warriors finally tried to don it, he was crushed under its weight, the armor rejecting him as if it had no interest in strength alone. Then came the Zarthians, fast, agile, and technologically adept. They believed they could outsmart the armor. Their scientific advancements were rivaled only by their trickery. They created a device, an intricate gadget designed to bypass the armor's rejection mechanism. The Zarthians, with their signature intelligence, attached the device to the armor and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the device malfunctioned, and the armor expelled it with a force so intense that it disintegrated in the air. The Zarthians, stunned by their failure, realized that the armor was not just a tool, it was alive in some way, and it would not be manipulated by any trickery. The Retharians, known for their advanced biology and cybernetic enhancements, made their attempt next. Their leaders, some of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful beings, saw themselves as the perfect candidates to bond with the armor. They sent their best scientist, the Retharian Lord Vastra, to the armor's resting place. With his cybernetic enhancements, Lord Vastra was confident in his ability to merge with the armor's technology. As he approached, he felt the armor's pulse, a strange hum resonating within his body. The hum grew louder, and for a moment, it seemed as though the armor would accept him. But just as quickly, the hum shifted to a deep, unsettling tone, and Lord Vastra collapsed, his enhancements failing as the armor rejected him completely. The Retharians, who had believed themselves superior, were left stunned and humiliated. Despite their failures, the alien races never gave up on the armor. It became an obsession, a symbol of ultimate power that they could not control. There were whispers across the galaxy of its existence, rumors of its capabilities, but no one knew its true purpose. To the aliens, the armor became a legend, something to be revered and feared in equal measure. But none of them understood the truth. It was never meant for them. The galaxy moved on. Civilizations rose and fell, and the armor remained untouched, waiting for the right being. But who that being was, no one could say. There were no prophecies, no ancient texts that gave a clue. The armor's rejection was so absolute that it became an enigma, an unsolved mystery that would linger in the minds of those who dared to seek it. Then, one day, a human arrived. At first, the aliens barely noticed. Humans were, after all, a small, insignificant species in the grand scope of the galaxy. The Terrans, as they were called, were considered primitive, organically inferior, technologically undeveloped, and utterly forgettable. They were little more than a curiosity for the greater powers of the galaxy. But the human in question was not just any human. They were from a military colony, a place far removed from the diplomatic intricacies of the galactic courts. This human, an individual whose name was irrelevant for now, was not an alien scholar or leader, nor was he a scientist or warrior of any great renown. He had no special abilities, no exceptional traits that set him apart from the billions of others who had lived before him. He was simply an explorer, a soldier sent on a routine mission to investigate a forgotten world, a place where no one had set foot in millennia. The human stumbled upon the armor's resting place by chance. There was no grand destiny involved, no prophecy. He simply walked into the chamber, unaware of its significance. The chamber was deep within a forgotten ruin, ancient and decayed. Yet the armor was untouched, its surface gleaming faintly in the darkness. The human, accustomed to his own world's simple technology, was in awe of the sheer scale of the relic. He had no idea what it was, just that it was a powerful artifact, one that had survived countless ages. At first, it was a mere flicker of light, a small spark of recognition. Then the armor began to hum, slowly at first, then building in intensity. The human felt a strange sensation in his chest, a feeling he couldn't describe. The armor responded to him, acknowledging his presence. Unlike the alien attempts before him, it did not reject him. Instead, it seemed to be waiting. The human stepped back, confused. His hand had brushed against the surface of the armor, but he hadn't expected this. The armor wasn't rejecting him. It was responding. Slowly, cautiously, he reached forward again. The moment his hand made contact, the entire room seemed to come alive. The armor shifted, moved as though it were alive, and wrapped itself around the human's form. The armor closed around the human with a slow, deliberate motion, fitting itself to his form as though it had always been meant for him. It adjusted to his frame seamlessly, merging with his body without pain, without resistance. There was no ceremony, no explosion of energy. Just a quiet, undeniable bond forming in the silence. The human froze, heart pounding, struggling to process what was happening. Around him, the ancient chamber remained silent, but the armor seemed to hum, almost like a heartbeat syncing with his own. He moved his hand experimentally, and the armor responded instantly, without hesitation or delay. It felt lighter than it should have, more like a second skin than an external shell. The human exhaled slowly, nerves raw, mind racing. What was this thing? Why him? He had no answer, only the rising certainty that something profound had changed. His instinct screamed at him to move, to get away before something terrible happened, but curiosity overrode fear. For a moment, he tried to pull the armor off, but it didn't budge. Instead, it tightened slightly, almost as if to remind him that it had chosen him, not the other way around. He stopped struggling. The armor wasn't imprisoning him, it was becoming a part of him. His breathing slowed. He felt something stirring in his mind, a presence, not words, not thoughts, but impressions. Echoes of purpose, fragments of ancient memories he knew weren't his. Images flashed behind his eyes. Endless battles fought under alien skies, civilizations rising and falling, warriors standing against impossible odds. The armor was more than a tool. It was a legacy, carrying the burdens of its past bearers, none of them alien. They were all human. The realization stunned him. Somewhere in the deep past, humans had been tied to this armor, but the records, the history, none of it survived on Earth. Somehow they had been forgotten. The armor fed more to him. It showed glimpses of its construction, hands similar to his own shaping it, forging it with purpose beyond anything the galaxy's current rulers understood. It had waited, enduring the ages in solitude, rejecting every other species because none were right. None had the spark, the madness, the stubbornness. Only humans could wield it. He stumbled forward, the connection overwhelming. But the armor supported him, stabilizing his movements as if understanding his weakness. Information poured into his mind, not in a language but in pure comprehension. He knew how to activate its systems, how to shield himself, how to enhance his strength. It wasn't training, it was instinct being unlocked, like something buried deep within his DNA responding to a call older than any civilization. He raised his hand and the armor responded with a pulse of energy, visible only for a moment before fading into the air. He didn't fully understand it, but he felt it, like a muscle he hadn't known he possessed now flexing for the first time. It exhilarated and terrified him. Outside the ruins, alien forces closed in. Word had spread quickly, an unknown entity had made contact with the armor. The Zarthians were the first to arrive, armed and arrogant, believing that if they could not bond with the armor, they could still seize it and dissect whoever had succeeded. Their warships hovered above the crumbling ruins, weapons primed, soldiers ready to descend. The human heard the thrum of their engines before he saw them. His instincts, honed from years of training and survival, screamed at him to hide, but the armor pulsed again, filling him with an unfamiliar courage. He stepped out of the ruins and into the light, the armor gleaming with an unearthly sheen. The Zarthian soldiers laughed when they saw him, one human, alone, armored but seemingly insignificant. Their laughter died quickly. He moved without thinking, without planning. The armor amplified his reactions, read his intentions before he acted. Bullets, energy blasts, missiles, none could touch him. The armor absorbed or deflected them with a grace that defied understanding. He closed the distance between himself and the soldiers in seconds, moving faster than any unaugmented being should have been able to. His strikes were precise, devastating. The Zarthians had come expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they were broken in moments. One of the larger Zarthian exomechs, a towering machine of war, charged him, weapons blazing. The human ducked low, the armor adapting fluidly, and sprang upward, his fist, enhanced by the armor's energy, puncturing through the mech's armored chest with a single blow. The machine staggered, convulsed, and collapsed in a heap of smoking metal. The human stood among the wreckage, chest heaving. The Zarthian survivors retreated in chaos, the legend of the armor now real before their terrified eyes. Word would spread faster than any ship could travel. The armor had bonded, and not with any grand conqueror or galactic noble, but with a human. In the aftermath of the battle, the human tried to remove the armor again, curiosity and fear battling inside him. It did not resist him this time. Instead, it shifted, receding into a form of compact plating across his body, hidden beneath his clothing but ready to emerge at a moment's notice. It wasn't imprisoning him, it was protecting him, waiting for him to accept it fully. He sat down among the ruins, mind racing. Who had built this armor? Why had they chosen humanity, a species barely known in the galactic scheme of things? The impressions he'd received hinted at a lost age, an ancient human civilization that had reached the stars long before recorded history. They had built wonders, fought wars among the stars, and in the end, faded into myth, their creations left to drift among the ruins of time. The armor was their legacy, a final act of faith in their descendants. It had waded through the eons, rejecting the galaxy's finest because it remembered the fire of humanity, a fire the others lacked. Not strength, not intellect, not technology. Something deeper. A refusal to submit. A spark of rebellion that no other species possessed. He stood again, the armor shifting with him, feeling almost like it was alive, connected directly to his mind and heart. The galaxy would come for him now. The alien empires would not accept that a human possessed something they had coveted for millennia. They would fear him. They would hate him. They would try to take the armor from him or destroy him if they could not. He smiled grimly. Let them try. The armor hummed in agreement, ready for whatever came next. Together they would carve their own path through the stars. Not for conquest, not for power, but because the human spirit could not be contained. He didn't need to understand every mystery of the armor to know one thing. It had chosen him, and through him, humanity would rise. Without warning, a second wave of forces appeared in orbit, this time from multiple alien factions. They had abandoned all pretense of negotiation or diplomacy. The existence of a human wielding the armor was a threat too great to ignore. Warships descended, soldiers armed with the most advanced weapons marched toward his location. They thought they were coming to crush a primitive species clinging to an artifact they didn't deserve. He tightened his fists, feeling the armor's energy surge through him. He would not run. He would not hide. The armor was not a shield for cowards, it was a weapon for warriors. He didn't wait. Waiting was for the prey, and he was no one's prey. He launched upward, the armor's thrusters igniting with a silent roar, carrying him into the air as anti-aircraft fire screamed past. He wove through the chaos like a phantom, closing the distance to the nearest enemy cruiser with terrifying speed. They barely had time to register his presence before he tore through the hull, breaching the ship's core and collapsing it in a fiery cascade. He moved with brutal efficiency, each attack calculated to cripple, to break morale, to send a message that could not be misunderstood. The fleets began to falter. Commanders who had come for easy glory realized they faced annihilation instead. Desperation spread through the ranks. Calls for reinforcements echoed across alien communication networks, but it didn't matter. They could send 1,000 more fleet. The result would be the same. Back on the ground, the remaining armies regrouped, forming desperate coalitions. Species that had been bitter enemies for centuries stood side by side, their hatred of each other momentarily eclipsed by the existential threat before them. They unleashed weapons of unimaginable devastation. Planetary bombardments turned mountains to dust. Singularity missiles tore rips through reality itself. Still, he came, unstoppable, inevitable. The armor adapted with each strike. It absorbed kinetic energy, bent gravity around him, shifted molecular bonds to neutralize chemical and plasma attack. No technology in their arsenals had been made with the thought that something could resist everything. But humans had never been creatures of mere logic. They had been shaped by adversity, carved by chaos. The armor had been forged with that truth at its core. As the human cut a path through the heart of the Allied forces, a new threat emerged. The ancients. They were a species so old, so cloaked in myth, that most of the galaxy believed them extinct. They arrived in ships unlike anything the younger races had ever built, their designs fluid, almost organic, radiating power drawn from sources older than the stars themselves. Where the others had failed through brute force, the ancients sought to unravel him through precision, understanding the armor's history better than any others. They deployed weapons that attacked the mind, bending reality around the human, warping his perception, trying to sever the bond between him and the armor. For a heartbeat, he staggered under the assault, memories not his own crashing into him, ancient betrayals, wars fought in distant epochs, the agony of 1,000 lost bearers. The ancients tried to turn his own humanity against him, to make him doubt, to break his will. But doubt was not defeat. Pain was not surrender. The human dug deeper, reaching beyond the fear and confusion, into the core of what he was. The armor answered his call, anchoring him with a surge of pure, burning certainty. His enemies had never understood what made humanity dangerous. It wasn't their technology. It wasn't their strength. It was the unbreakable will to defy fate, to choose to stand even when logic said to kneel. He broke the illusion with a roar, tearing free from the psychic chains. The ancients recoiled, unprepared for such raw defiance. He struck back, not with weapons of destruction, but with the truth of his existence, a being who refused to yield, who would rather burn out the stars themselves than surrender. The ancients faltered, their carefully laid plans crumbling before the one thing they could not anticipate: human stubbornness. The battle entered its final phase. The surviving factions launched their last, desperate gambits. Bioengineered monstrosities the size of cities were unleashed. Weapons that bent time and probability targeted him. Entire sectors of the planet were turned into death zones. But every blow only sharpened him further. The armor evolved in real time, matching every escalation with its own. He no longer thought about survival. He thought about what came after. If the galaxy wanted a monster, a myth, a force of terror, then that's what he would become. Not because he craved destruction, but because survival demanded it. He would become the reminder of humanity's legacy, the vengeance of forgotten ancestors who had once walked among the stars and had been lost to time and betrayal. One by one, he dismantled the last bastions of resistance. The monstrous constructs fell under his relentless assault, their synthetic flesh no match for the fury he embodied. The weapons of time and chance cracked under the sheer force of his refusal to be undone. The death zones became silent memorials to those who had thought technology alone could master will. The final coalition shattered. Their leaders fled, abandoning armies to slaughter, abandoning worlds to ruin. Fear spread across the galaxy faster than light. The message was simple and absolute. The armor had chosen, and in its choice, humanity had been reborn into legend once more. He stood among the devastation, the planet reduced to a graveyard of ambition and greed. The armor, once a silent relic, now pulsed with life and pride. The galaxy had sought to claim it, to dominate it, to tame it. Instead, it had reignited the very spirit it was created to protect. He raised his eyes to the stars, feeling the armor stretch its awareness outward. Other worlds watched. Other empires trembled. They would come again, but not as conquerors. They would come begging, fearing, or plotting, but they would remember this day. They would remember that humanity, lost and dismissed, had risen from obscurity with a power born not from technology, but from an indomitable will. There would be no peace, not yet. Too many powers would see him as a threat that must be neutralized. He didn't care. His fight was no longer about survival or even legacy. It was about proving, beyond doubt, that humanity belonged among the stars, not as servants, not as subjects, but as equals, as rivals, as something to be feared and respected. The armor whispered to him of distant places, of lost human colonies that still might exist, scattered across the void. He would find them. He would gather the scattered remnants of his people, unite them under a banner not of empire but of endurance. Humanity's rebirth would not be a quiet return but a roaring blaze that would force the galaxy to remember them forever. He turned from the ruins and walked toward the horizon, the ground trembling slightly under his steps. Above him, the remnants of the armada fled into the void, their pride shattered, their certainties broken. Behind him lay the ruins of a failed invasion. Ahead lay the vast unknown, a canvas of endless stars. The armor thrummed with energy, a bond forged through fire and blood, stronger than ever. He was not the last of his kind. He was the first of a new beginning. And the galaxy would never forget the moment when the armor, after rejecting every alien who sought to claim it, finally found a human, and humanity reminded the stars why they had once ruled among them.